It's the Internet Historian. Welcome back to another episode. In today's episode, we will be discussing the history behind the movie Tesla. So, visionary inventor Nikola Tesla fights an uphill battle to bring his revolutionary electrical system to fruition, then faces thornier challenges with his new system for worldwide wireless energy. So, what do you guys think? Let me start actually this one because I have some thoughts. So it's like
Okay.
it's not that I don't know. So I felt like I didn't really enjoy the movie, but it's not like I hated it. Like there was some aspects to it that I liked. Like I felt like I saw where they were going with it. And like I kind of did enjoy the way they kind of chose to film the movie. But I don't know. I feel like it just didn't accomplish what they set out to. And I feel like it kind of, I don't know.
I
It
thought it was
just,
boring.
yeah, well, I didn't really pay attention when I was watching it. And I was like, oh my God, this is like, I don't know. Like I liked how they did kind of like some future like shit, like I don't know, like
Mm-hmm.
how they like did the narration even too. I kind of enjoyed that.
Yeah, breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
just how it looked, like I don't know, like certain scenes, like how they chose to like I don't know, film it, I liked, but for some reason overall I just feel like it didn't do it for me. And I feel like if they just would have done certain things differently, I don't know how what differently or how they could have done it differently. Something about it, like it was just missing something that to make it like an actual good movie for
Yeah, I
me.
agree. My favorite scene was the ice cream battle.
That was funny.
I know. I was like, what is going on? And then she was like, that didn't happen or something. I was like, okay.
It's like smashing the ice creams on
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Ice
yeah,
cream battle.
it really threw me off. It's so funny because it didn't throw me off when she like Googled the images, but that's probably because I was like, oh, she's the narrator, and I didn't put like two and two together that she was also a character in the movie. But like until later. But anyways,
Oh
it
my
was
God.
when Edison, they had that conversation where they're like with Edison admitting he was wrong, and then he went to the bar and he took out his phone. I was like, what's going on?
I love that.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I like certain things like that because I feel like it made it like entertaining and made it like I think it was a better movie than The Current War, at least that much. But like I still didn't really like, full on enjoy it
I
that
wonder if
much.
it's just because like it's like how do I say this? Like I was like, is Tesla kind of boring?
I don't know. I
But
don't know if it's that he's boring or if that there really just isn't that much about him.
mhm.
I mean, there's even like researching this, it's kind of like the same thing that
Mm.
one it was like a lot of it was like almost word for word that was in this movie, and I was just kind of just like, well, did the guy who or that wrote this movie, the writer and director, was he an internet historian? Because I was just like, this stuff is just like but I mean, apparently he did read and research. I guess this was a movie that he had written while he was in film school and really
Mhm.
wanted like he was like stuck on it. He really wanted to make this movie about Tesla, so I guess he had been researching for a while. But I feel like, yeah, it kind of comes down to I just don't think there really is that much
Mhm.
about him in
Yeah.
general, unlike Edison, who, you know, was more talkative, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, and I think
But
that's why it kind of worked in the way like they did the narration, everything like that. I feel like that worked with the film because again, like you said, there wasn't that much info on him. So I feel like because of that, they like the stylistic things they chose for the movie like worked with it because they were trying to like make it into something more than it kind of was. Um, but yeah, I found myself just not paying attention for long portions of the movie. And I'm like, wait, I gotta watch this, and reminding
Mhm.
myself like, let me pay attention again.
yeah, I really liked it. I mean, I there were parts towards the end where I wasn't paying attention. I like got on my phone and JC's just like, "Are you even watching?" And I'm like, "Yes, yes." Like, but I missed some spots. But it was mostly like when he got to like the tower portion, and it was like him and Anne and kind of like his, I wouldn't say downfall, but kind of his like fall from, you know,
Grace.
I guess.
Fall from grace.
Yeah, so I mean, there was like some lulls and like slow conversations where I was just kind of like, eh. But like the first half of the movie is really good. I don't know. I really like this movie. I mean, I did also really like Current War, but I feel like both of these movies are for different people and like they're just so different stylistically. I feel like the Current War is trying to teach you about electricity, and this movie is just like a beautiful homage to
Yeah,
Tesla.
I can agree with that because I was just gonna say, I was like, I feel like too with this film, it was very because when I was watching, I was like, man, I feel like this like if you were to watch this, I feel like you would not understand really what his life was, or like what the things he did, because I felt like it was very much just like this happened, then that happened, then like it's like they were just telling you his life really quickly versus like in the current one where they were kind of more flushing everything out a little like more. So yeah, I agree with that.
So everything that I got was from history.com, Encyclopedia Britannica, and the Smithsonian, and then of course Wikipedia, because what else is new? Nikola Tesla was born in 1856 in Smiljan, Croatia, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His father was a priest in the Serbian Orthodox Church, and his mother managed the family's farm. In 1863, Tesla's brother Daniel was killed in a riding accident. The shock of the loss unsettled the 7-year-old Tesla, who reported seeing visions, the first signs of his lifelong mental illness. Which I feel like, did you guys really get that impression from the movie? Because I felt like in my research, it seemed like it was more apparent, I guess, that he was losing it. But in the movie, it was just kind of just like, oh, alien encounters. But besides that, they didn't really show much else.
Yeah, I was like he kind of just mentioned it, right? Like there wasn't anything that they showed. He kind of was just like, this happened, right?
Yeah,
What I can remember from the few moments that I paid attention.
He seemed a lot more tame than I expected towards the end. Yeah.
Like honestly, like no shade to Ethan Hawke, but I feel like they should have just done Nicholas Hoult again. I feel like he would have, I don't know.
I went into this, and when it started, I was just like, wait a second, what is this? And then I realized, I'm like, oh no, that's the Tesla from the other movie. Like it threw me.
Because I feel like he wasn't eccentric enough. Like I feel like, because they always, like even in the research, they always talk about how he was very like kind of like out there, like flamboyant person, I guess. And I feel like I didn't get that from Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, I know. That's what I meant. I wasn't trying to throw shade earlier, but I was like, is Tesla boring? But maybe it was just Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird like
portrayal
spectrum, I would say, of like a portrayal, because like I don't know if I disliked Nicholas Holt's portrayal, but like he seemed to, I don't know, not like robotic, but like he just was like too focused, I guess, and like he didn't have anything else going on, even though like in my research they're like, that's kind of a really bland portrayal of him, because like they showed in the movie, he did like music, he did like art and all this stuff, and they did show that a little more with Ethan Hawke's portrayal. But then on the other end, Ethan Hawke didn't really have much going on like conversation wise, and like I don't know, but yeah, so I don't know, both portrayals are kind of interesting, I'd say.
Oh, but my favorite portrayal was Westinghouse.
Oh, with Jim Gaffigan or Michael Shannon?
No, with Jim Gaffigan. He's because I think that's more what I always thought George was like, a little more like, hey, I've got bad news.
Yeah, and I would say I did like Kyle MacLachlan more as Edison than Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, me too.
Same. Yeah, it was like, I don't know.
I feel like Benedict kind of did too much. Like he was like trying to be like,
yeah, and I feel like he's kind of typecasted, honestly, as like the asshole character, and like everything he's in, like Doctor Strange and all that stuff. He's always just like a jerk. So it's just like I felt like his Edison was just every other Benedict Cumberbatch character, while Kyle MacLachlan kind of had like a good balance of like he'd make like slights at people, but then like play it off like he was being nice. I would like it was more nuanced, I'd say, than Benedict Cumberbatch, but. I just love Kyle MacLachlan too, so he also kind of looked like him more, I feel. From an early age, he demonstrated the obsessiveness that would puzzle and amuse those around him. He could memorize entire books and store logarithmic tables in his brain. He picked up languages easily, and he could work through days and nights on only a few hours of sleep. Training for an engineering career, at the age of 19, he attended the Technical University at Graz, Austria, and the University of Prague. At Graz, he first saw the Graham dynamo, which operated as a generator and when reversed became an electric motor, and he conceived a way to use alternating current to advantage. He would spend the next 6 years of his life thinking, they say, quote, thinking about electromagnetic fields and a hypothetical motor powered by alternate current that would and should work. The thoughts obsessed him, and he was unable to focus on his schoolwork. Professors at the university warned Tesla's father that the young scholar's working and sleeping habits were killing him. But rather than finish his studies, Tesla became a gambling addict, lost all his tuition money, dropped out of school, and suffered a nervous breakdown. It would not be his last. In 1881, Tesla moved to Budapest after recovering from his breakdown, and he was walking through a park with a friend, which they show in the movie, his friend. reciting poetry when a vision came to him. There in the park with a stick, Tesla drew a crude diagram in the dirt, a motor using the principle of rotating magnetic fields created by two or more alternating currents. While AC electrification had been employed before, there would never be a practical working motor run on alternating current until he invented his induction motor several years later. And then I'll try to breeze through the rest of this because I feel like we have been over this. In 1882, Tesla went to work in Paris for the Continental Edison Company, and while on assignment in Strasbourg in 1883, he constructed, after work hours, his first induction motor. Tesla sailed for America in 1884, arriving in New York with 4 cents in his pocket and a letter of recommendation from Charles Batchelor, a former employer, to Thomas Edison, which was purported to say, My dear Edison, I know 2 great men and you are one of them. The other is this young man. He first found employment with Thomas Edison, but the 2 inventors were far apart in background and methods, and their separation was inevitable. He worked there for a year, impressing Edison with his diligence and ingenuity. Tesla believed his mind to be without equal, and he wasn't above chiding his contemporaries, such as Edison, who he says, if Edison had a needle to find in a haystack, he would proceed at once with the diligence of the bee to examine straw after straw until he found the object of his search. I was a sorry witness of such doing that a little theory and calculation would have saved him 90% of his labor. Which I feel like is a pretty good assessment in seeing Edison in the movies. He very much seems more like, let's do it. Don't even give it any other foresight. Just go. At one point, Edison told Tesla he would pay $50,000 for an improved design for his DC dynamos. After months of experimentation, Tesla presented a solution and asked for the money. Edison demurred, saying, when you become a full-fledged American, you'll appreciate an American joke. Tesla quit soon after. I thought was kind of interesting because in my research, they had that quote a couple different ways, but I feel like in the movie, I definitely caught the part where they were meeting in the bar and where he, was supposedly apologizing, but that didn't really happen. And then Tesla points out, he's like, well, I'm American now. And I thought that was kind of an interesting, after reading this quote, I'm like, oh, okay, that's why he said that. Because now he understands. After an unsuccessful attempt to start his own Tesla electric light company and a stint digging ditches for $2 a day, Tesla found backers to support his research into alternating current. In 1887 and 1888, he was granted more than 30 patents for his inventions and invited to address the American Institute of Electrical Engineers on his work. His lecture caught the attention of George Westinghouse, the inventor who had launched the first AC power system near Boston and was Edison's major competitor in the Battle of the Currents. Westinghouse hired Tesla, licensed the patents for his AC motor, and gave him his own lab. In 1890, Edison arranged for a convicted New York murderer to be put to death in an AC-powered electric chair, a stunt designed to show how dangerous the Westinghouse standard could be. Buoyed by Westinghouse's royalties, Tesla struck out on his own again, but Westinghouse was soon forced by his backers to renegotiate their contract, with Tesla relinquishing his royalty rights. Fearing ruin, Westinghouse begged Tesla for relief from the royalties. Westinghouse agreed to. He says, quote, your decision determines the fate of the Westinghouse company. Tesla, grateful to the man who had never tried to swindle him, tore up the royalty contract, walking away from millions in royalties that he was already owed and billions that would have accrued in the future. He would have been one of the wealthiest men in the world, a titan of the Gilded Age.
One thing I can say is that I feel like in this film, I liked how they described like the AC versus DC currents better. I feel like they kind of just flat out explained it to like the viewer kind of in a better. I think it was Edison who was kind of like AC is like a flowing, or like how he was like describing. I feel like
water,
yeah, stuff like that. I was like, I feel like that makes more sense than whatever the hell they did in the current war. So let me talk about the cool stuff. Not just kidding. So Tesla's love life or his relationships with Anne Morgan and Sarah Bernhardt is her name. I did not know the other girl's name for some reason. Even watching, I was like, "What's her name?"
I was like Sarah. That was I was like, "Who's this?"
Yeah. Okay. So Tesla's love life in the film, he seems to have 2 kind of relationships with Anne Morgan and Sarah Bernhardt, and also too during this research, I kept forgetting that Anne Morgan was what's his name,
J.P. Morgan's daughter.
Yeah. Even though I was like, oh wait, yeah, duh. because they kept mentioning it, and I was like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, okay." Anyways, first, I think it needs to be said that people aren't sure if he was even into women, which I feel like again seems to be a
Oh, okay.
trend. Yeah, I was like, it's always a trend with these things
Yeah.
from later times. I think mainly it has to do with the fact that I guess they didn't really know what to like label it as. I don't know. I guess being gay just wasn't a common thing, or they didn't really have anything to like, I don't know, conceptualize that for some reason. Obviously, because they were just, more into keeping it like men and women. And also because they always look at like, oh, well, he only mainly had male companions, like, his friend that he traveled with. I think that was kind of one of the clues that they had for him possibly being not into women.
What
So
about
yeah, and
just being asexual and just like
yeah,
not being into
yeah,
any of
and I
it?
guess he was just also like a lifelong bachelor, so that's also kind of why they just assumed maybe he was gay. But yeah, you're totally right. There's other things that and I think he was
Didn't
just
He
also
they?
just
just
loves science.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
yeah, I
because
was like, I
duh.
think he was
Science
just
is his
very
love.
focused on his work and
yeah,
Yeah.
making sure that he had no distractions. So I think that's kind of mainly what it was
I
as
think
well.
I think I read somewhere that he said that abstaining or like from that helped helped him like be more effective in
Yeah.
his work, you know?
Oh yeah, and I guess once he said that he felt like he could never be worthy enough for a woman because women basically were just so superior creatures. But then it was also interesting because in basically the next sentence of this article that I found, it was saying how like once women started to be kind of more not assertive or like kind of doing
Yeah.
their own thing, kind of be like, finding jobs and stuff like that, he kind of, I guess, came out saying things like he didn't like this new woman and he felt like women who were trying to do stuff were becoming too like manly basically
Oh,
and
I thought it was just like a fashion or something.
no, it was like they were losing like their femininity basically is what he
Mhm.
said, which I was like, okay, what you said, dude.
The only like I can kind of respect what he mean. Well, I guess like what I can understand what he means by like women and their femininity is that like they always say how like women are trying to like be like I guess adapt to the man's I don't know not his lifestyle but the way he like approaches things in order to kind of try to succeed in the world. And so I can see how he's trying to say like he loves like women the way they are. We don't have to change ourselves in order to succeed like we are successful already. Because I don't know, there's like this trend on Instagram going around where they're like um typing my emails like a man so I can get something done. Like I don't know if have you seen that.
Uh-uh.
Like the girls would change like instead like can you please look into this, it just like erase can you please just please look in or like please
Yeah.
look into this, like you know what I mean, instead
Mhm.
of like or sorry to bother you, and then they
Don't
would just
say
like
sorry.
yeah, exactly. Like erase that part out. And so anyway, so like that's
Bother
how
you. Not just
I
kidding.
know.
like
I don't know, because I guess from like I don't know what this article was saying. To me, it made it seem like he just wanted women to stay like doing it. Because I don't know, because I guess they were like, finding jobs and like kind of like becoming more like just independent, I guess. And he was just kind of saying like because they're becoming like more independent and stuff like that, and straying away from what they normally do, he felt like they were losing their femininity and all this other stuff. So I don't know.
yeah, I guess I read it in a different way. I thought it was
Yeah.
more so like I was like, is that the time when they invented pants for women? Or like, because I think for a long time women only wore dresses, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
definitely.
yeah, and I just thought like it was just like how women were just starting to, I
But
don't
then
know,
again,
like
maybe
try
it's
to
just because if people actually thought he was gay, maybe he just had an appreciation for just women, how they looked and stuff like that. And some, I don't know.
It's old fashioned, I guess.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so with Anne Morgan, basically a lot of what found was kind of just like it was an exaggeration, I guess, her
Mm.
portrayal in the film. They were kind of more or less just friends. And I don't think they were much more than that. There was a biography on Tesla that said that Anne had a schoolgirl crush on Tesla and she threw herself at him, but there isn't any record or proof
That's
that
how
this
I
is
saw it
true.
as.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I don't know, because I guess that was the one thing this biographer is the only person that really said that. So I guess that he said
Mm.
that the film kind of just like went off of that, but there's not really any record or proof of it. And also, she might also not have been into men. She was apparently could have. There's actually evidence though that suggests that
Oh,
she
okay.
was into women because there was, I guess she moved to England or whatever she moved to. I think they showed at the end of the film where she was living with some lady or something like that. Her name was Elizabeth Marbury, and I guess they lived together, and this Elizabeth Marbury was a known, like, gay woman, a lesbian, and she also had a gay partner or lesbian partner. And and I guess they apparently Elizabeth Anne was like infatuated with her and like was always around her. And they were basically like attached at the hip. And I guess Anne also lived with this Elizabeth Marbury. And I guess Anne also never married her whole life. So she went all like many, obviously until her death, not having married anyone. So people were kind of like putting all the pieces together to kind of think like, okay, maybe she was also a lesbian. So that also could be why they are just really close friends, because maybe they both were just not into each other and we just had a friendship because of that. And I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. Like, I don't know, the dynamic was very interesting because the whole time I was just like, it did seem kind of like a schoolgirl crush type of a thing where she was like, follow him and wasn't that like, oh, I'll follow you to Chicago, all that type of stuff. And he was just like kind of not really into it. But then when Tesla showed interest in Sarah, she seemed kind of like a wingman type of a thing to Tesla.
I thought she was like, she seemed kind of jealous to me.
I don't know, not to me. For some,
Mhm.
I don't know. For some reason, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. She seemed like she's like trying to help out or something. I don't know. It was interesting.
So with his relationship with Sarah Bernhardt, basically kind of the same. It's like an exaggeration. Apparently she did sleep in a coffin.
What?
Yeah, and so that was right. And then anyway, so I guess there was a rumor that she once threw her handkerchief at Tesla's feet and he merely picked it up and handed it back to her without noticing who she was. He did attend one of her parties as well, but like as we see in the film when he runs into Edison. So I guess he did attend some parties of hers, mainly just that one. But other than that, there is no evidence that he was ever into her and vice versa. And I guess Sarah Bernhardt also had a negative view of love. And there's a quote saying, or she said, suppose you had to cut your head off and give it to someone else. What difference would it make? That is what love is like. So she wasn't really
Wow.
into being in love.
Okay, so the Tesla coil. So it's okay. First of all, let's start off with the pictures because I think that's the easiest one. Because in the movie, right, they said that there was like 4 pictures of him, but like as I'm looking right now, there's like maybe 6, pictures
Yeah.
of him. Yeah, there aren't like a million pictures of him, but then I
Yeah.
would say like I feel like that's pretty common during that time, like even because his time is around the same time as like Marie Curie, so I don't really remember if she has that many pictures. And then there's like Albert Einstein. It's like, did he have
Yeah.
that many pictures? But then he did die. Well,
But I feel like with this one, it is true. It's always this freaking
yeah.
photo or like him when he's like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to use like 2 pictures specifically versus like a bunch of other ones. But yeah, there's pictures of him like older, and there's like one picture of him like when he looks like when he's, I don't know, early 20s or maybe even late teens or something like that. But in terms of like the one that most commonly used, there's those 2. Yeah, for sure.
I really like that they the your photo background, Lisa. The whole time that I'd seen this photo, I thought it was a drawing, but it's a photograph, and I like how they recreated it in the movie with him sitting in the chair with his
Mhm.
Yeah.
coil. I was like, that's cool.
Also,
Okay.
I didn't realize the coil was that freaking huge.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, they're
For some reason,
big.
I was like, it's a little tiny coil.
No, it's
No.
kind of funny. There's this restaurant here, which I mean, I guess now I'm moving. You guys will never come here again, but should have taken you there at the time.
I can
There's
visit
this,
your parents.
Yeah.
there's a steakhouse here, and I honestly do not know why, but they're like famous for having a Tesla coil. So in the middle of the restaurant, they have a Tesla coil that's like floor to ceiling, and like every hour, I want to say, it goes off and will shoot a ball, like a lightning to a ball that's next to it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Is
They
that
don't do it
safe?
too much anymore, but
Yeah.
I guess.
I know,
I mean, as
apparently
long
if
as the
they,
ball's there to catch the electricity. But yeah, I'm just like,
what?
yeah, that's the first time I'd ever seen one. And then I was like, oh, let's learn more about Tesla. And I'm like, oh yeah, the
That's
Tesla coil I saw.
Yeah.
That's
That's
cool.
that's
Yeah,
crazy.
anywho.
I'm gonna go through his best known inventions. Well, first of all is the alternating current, which we all know about.
Mhm.
Second is the coil. So the coil is basically embodied in this tower, and it like how do we okay, it's basically doing what's doing behind me, and it kind of shoots out electricity. It produces high voltage, low current, high frequency alternating current electricity. It says never allow anyone to come into contact with any part of the Tesla coil besides the main power switch while the Tesla coil is turned on. Nearly every part of the Tesla coil is capable of
I was gonna say it's lightning. I mean, there were when he would do his demonstrations, there were some demonstrations that he did where he would use the human body as a conductor for like fluorescent light bulbs. So there were some where he would have, people touch and then the light would come on type of thing. So
Also, tell me why watching this film, I forgot that you need like water produces electricity and shit too.
Oh, I would forget that as well.
Because yeah, I hella forgot when they were like when in the beginning when they were showing him kind of showing his alternating current or whatever the hell his like little contraption, there was water. I'm like, what the fuck? And then I was like, oh yeah, I forgot you need like water has like that's why they say don't swim when it's like lightning and shit outside. I'm like, duh.
As far as I can tell, they don't really use this in modern day because it's just not easy to manipulate, or like you can't point it in one direction. As you can see, it just like whoosh goes everywhere. And I bet Tesla was trying to use this so he or because it looked like he was very interested in wireless things. So I bet he wanted to use this in the movement of making things wireless. But then, like I said, in terms of just like trying to control it and manipulate it and make sure it's like very safe for everybody, doesn't look like it. It's just very unique. And they do like to show it off in museums. And like you said, Alec, it's like a nice party trick.
steakhouses.
Yeah. So it's cool, but I guess we're not there yet in learning how we can use that in our modern day life. And then there's the magnifying transmitter. Like I said, he was trying really hard to make things wireless. So he was trying to figure out a way to make light bulbs work wirelessly. So I think this is like his invention to try to like where he tried to light a light bulb wirelessly. But it does sound kind of like sketch because it's like it's like a transmitter. It's like makes me think of radioactivity, right? Where you're like, what's in the air that would make this light will turn on, Is it radiation? What energy is out there? But then there's the Tesla turbine. It says Tesla developed a pristine engine to power automobiles using combustion to rotate discs. At the time, commonly used turbines were less efficient and relied on blades. Tesla's invention merged many discs to create a central fungal pump. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but by moving liquid into the path of the least resistance, his turbine was more fuel efficient. Oh, okay. I guess that goes into his car.
Or turbine?
Oh, turbine. Sorry.
Like, what's a turbine?
Turbine. My bad. There's also the induction motor, which is using electromagnets to spin. Tesla's induction motor currently powers everyday household items such as vacuums, hair dryers, and power tools.
So I had corrections corner because I was like, I think we said that backwards last time, and it's probably because I'm really bad at explaining things. But yeah, we got mixed up, and we said that electric vehicles use DC for charging, but they actually use AC for charging.
So they do use
Teslas.
Oh. But I think one of the things I thought I read in one article saying that the Tesla specifically uses DC, no?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, I Googled it. I tried to figure it out, and everything that I read said AC. So
Tight.
I don't know.
Yeah. Let's call Elon.
Yeah. Elon.
Hello?
Hello.
So then we have the shadow graph, which really tripped me out because I was like, Marie? And
yeah, when I saw that, I was like, wait, that looks like an X-ray.
Yeah, no, it isn't. It is an X-ray. It's his own like version of an X-ray, which I think is something I would like a little bit more because X-rays, right? They just mostly just show your bones, but the shadow graph kind of shows a little bit of a silhouette. So like he had one of his hand and you could see the bones in his hands, but you can see like a little outline of his flesh.
Yeah.
But then I understand probably doctors don't really like that. It might be a little distracting, or even the shadows might be blocking what they need to actually see. But cool. I think I bet he just thought that X-rays were cool and he just wanted to like find his own way of twist it in his own way. And then there was the radio. So he was really interested in trying to figure out to transmit radio signals like 50 miles away. But somebody else kind of beat him to that. But I guess he did succeed. It's just the patent, patents. Then there's neon. Then there's neon lamps, which we see a lot these days. And like a lot of those Instagram things where, those little neon lights with the words like live, laugh, love. Then there's the hydroelectric power, which we saw in Niagara Falls. And then we have the remote controlled boats. I always think of a drone. So like the remote to control the drone, which I guess people were a little like skeptical about because they felt like it would be something that people would use in war. But Tesla saw it more as replacing people, which also sucks, but kind of using, and it happens to this day.
Robots?
Yeah, no, not robots, but instead of having somebody do this, they have like, a machine do it instead, or like that you can control through a remote. So that's his most famous inventions. There was definitely most likely like a lot more stuff he had like that he wanted to invent, a lot of notes, but there was a fire in his laboratory, so it destroyed a lot of his notes. And then the FBI took his notes, and then they just like started releasing some of his notes more recently. But yeah, I was like, FBI.
By 1912, Tesla began to withdraw from the doubting world. He was clearly showing signs of obsessive compulsive disorder and was, it's a wording, I don't know, it's like kind of weird. It says, and was potentially a high functioning autistic. He became obsessed with cleanliness and fixated on the number 3. He began shaking hands with people and washing his hands, all done in sets of 3. He had to have 18 napkins on his table during meals and would count his steps whenever he walked anywhere. He claimed to have an abnormal sensitivity to sounds as well as an acute sense of sight. And he later wrote that he had a violent aversion against the earrings of women, and the sight of a pearl would almost give him a fit, which they do show in the movie. And I thought was kind of interesting because I hadn't read that yet. And so when I saw that in the movie, I was like, what is her necklace? He doesn't like it? Like, what? Tesla lived his last decades in a New York hotel, working on new inventions even as his energy and mental health faded. His obsessions were dismissed as the eccentricities of a genius. He spent his final years feeding and he claimed communicating with the city's pigeons. He became fixated on pigeons, especially a specific white female, which he claimed to love almost as one would love a human being. One night, Tesla claimed the white pigeon visited him through an open window at his hotel, and he believed the bird had come to tell him she was dying. He saw, quote, 2 powerful beams of light in the bird's eyes. He later said, yes, it was a real light, a powerful, dazzling, blinding light, a light more intense than I had ever produced by the most powerful lamps in my laboratory. The pigeon died in his arms, and the inventor claimed that in that moment he knew he had finished his life's works. In the fall of 1937,
That's so sad.
I know it is.
That sounds so sad.
I know. In the fall of 1937, at the age of 81, after midnight one night, Tesla left the Hotel New Yorker to make his regular commute to the cathedral and library to feed the pigeons. While crossing a street a couple of blocks from the hotel, Tesla was unable to dodge a moving taxi cab and was thrown to the ground. His back was severely wrenched and 3 of his ribs were broken in the accident. The full extent of his injuries were never known. Tesla refused to consult a doctor, an almost lifelong custom, and never fully recovered. Nikola Tesla would go on to make news from time to time while living on the 33rd floor of the New Yorker Hotel. In 1931, he made the cover of a Time magazine, which featured his inventions on his 75th birthday. And in 1934, the New York Times reported that Tesla was working on a death beam capable of knocking 10,000 enemy airplanes out of the sky. He hoped to fund a prototypical defensive weapon in the interest of world peace, but his appeals to J.P. Morgan Jr. and British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain went nowhere. Tesla did, however, receive a $25,000 check from the Soviet Union, but the project languished. Tesla died in his room on January 7th, 1943, in debt, although Westinghouse had been paying his room and board at the hotel for years. Later that year, this is what Lisa had mentioned. Later that year, the U.S. Supreme Court voided 4 of Marconi's key patents. So Marconi was a Italian inventor that supposedly beat him out for the invention of like radio. So the Supreme Court voided 4 of Marconi's key patents, belatedly acknowledging Tesla's inventions in radio. So I think from what I was reading, they kind of like Tesla had already been lecturing on radio, but they kind of gave it to Marconi because I don't know if it was just because of other things that Marconi had invented and he just had like a different reputation than Tesla at this point or why they gave it to him. But yeah, at least they acknowledged it, but sadly after his death.
Mm-hmm.
The AC system he championed and improved remains the global standard for power transmission. His body was later found by maid Alice Monahan after she had entered Tesla's room, ignoring the do not disturb sign that Tesla had placed on his door 2 days earlier. Assistant medical examiner H.W. Wembley examined the body and ruled that the cause of death had been coronary thrombosis, a blood clot that can lead to damaged tissue in the heart or to a heart attack. And then again, as Lisa mentioned, after Tesla's death, the custodian of alien property impounded his trunks, which held his papers, his diploma, and other honors, his letters, and his laboratory notes. And then this was interesting. John G. Trump, who is Donald Trump's uncle.
I was like, when I saw that, I was like, that guy. First, my thought was, oh, poor guy, like his last, like whatever, like I just think of Trump.
Yeah.
And they are related because I thought that.
It's his uncle. Because do you remember that silly quote where Trump's just like, oh, my family, they're scientists, they're smart. Do you remember that?
No, I don't pay attention to that.
Well, I think he was talking about his uncle because his uncle was a professor at MIT.
Wow.
So, and he was a well-known electrical engineer serving as a technical aide to the National Defense Research Community. And he was called in to analyze Tesla's items, which were being held in custody. After a 3-day investigation, Trump's report concluded that there was nothing which would constitute a hazard in unfriendly hands, stating Tesla's thoughts and efforts during at least the past 15 years were primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and somewhat promotional character, often concerned with the production and wireless transmission of power, but did not include new, sound, workable principles or methods for realizing such results. So they're kind of just like, was he building something dangerous? Let us know. On January 10th, 1943, New York City Mayor Fiorella LaGuardia of LaGuardia Airport read a eulogy.
Connection.
Read a eulogy written by Slovene American author Louis Adamic live over the WNYC radio while violin pieces Ave Maria and Tamo de Lecco were played in the background. On January 12th, and a couple things I read. So the movie said 2,000. Some stuff that I was reading said 2,000 or thousands. And then another thing that I read said hundreds of people. So I don't really know. A lot of people did show up, I guess, to his funeral.
That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I feel like the end of his life just seems kind of sad.
Yeah. So 2,000 people attended a state funeral for Tesla at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in Manhattan. After the funeral, Tesla's body was taken to the Ferncliff Cemetery in Ardsley, New York, where it was later cremated. The following day, a second service was conducted by prominent priests in the Trinity Chapel, today's Serbian Orthodox Cathedral of St. Sava in New York City. A flood of messages acknowledged the loss of a great genius. 3 Nobel Prize recipients addressed their tribute to, quote, one of the outstanding intellects of the world who paved the way for many of the technological developments of modern times. In 1952, following pressure from Tesla's nephew, Sava Kosanovic, Tesla's entire estate was shipped to Belgrade in 80 trunks marked NT. In 1957, Kosanovic's secretary, Charlotte Muzar, transported Tesla's ashes from the United States to Belgrade. The ashes are displayed in a gold-plated sphere on a marble pedestal in the Nikola Tesla Museum.
Yeah, and I feel like during that time too, I just imagine, because people who have mental illness or handicaps, I feel like people just kind of stay away from them. So I'm I wonder if that's also why he was very alone in his latter part of his life.
Yeah, I hated that scene where he came to the tennis court of JP Morgan and Anne and stuff, and he's just like, oh, you're just trying to get more money from me and all that type of stuff, and he just kind of shrugged it off, and I'm just like, man, that makes me so sad because it's just stuff's expensive, and he had so much research to do. It's just expensive because what was the movie saying that the first loan that JP Morgan gave him was equivalent to $4 million or something today.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, a lot of money.
I know, because it's kind of like when which I kind of zoned out a little bit on this conversation, but when Anne came to the tower and was talking to him, and he was talking about communicating with Mars and stuff like that, and it's just he's just ahead of his time, okay? He's not crazy.
We've said before too, he's very eccentric and just kind of out there and flamboyant, as I said. Even if he was gay or not, he was still like a flamboyant type of person. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
I think especially during that time, I just feel like people just he's misunderstood, and I don't think people knew how to handle him. And it's like sad. Like I don't know. I don't like when people die alone. It just makes me like, like like
He
no.
had his pigeons. Oh, but I read a interview on /film.com. This person interviewed the scientific consultant for the movie, which I thought was cool that they actually had a scientist consulting. P. James Shuck. Kind of a cool fun fact that he mentioned in the interview was did you know that maybe one of the last Edison DC power stations was finally just discontinued down on Lower Manhattan? They had signed something like a 99-year lease or contract and it finally ran out, which I thought
Damn.
was really cool. And
That's
this is
crazy.
an article from when the movie came out last year. So
Also,
that
what's
is
kind of
timely.
I mean, I thought this was funny, but I saw something that basically Tesla was the only one to write like a negative eulogy, I guess you could say, on Edison.
Oh,
And I read it and oh my God, he was like basically saying that Edison's like lazy and like he didn't accomplish anything and all this shit. And I was just like, damn, he was ruthless. He was the only one
Yeah.
though to write something negative like that. I'm like, first of all, why are they gonna ask him if they had this beef or whatever? Which I didn't realize they had a beef like that. I
yeah.
knew that, that he quit or whatever from working with Edison, but I didn't, for some reason, it didn't computate in my mind that there was some animosity there. But yeah.
Oh, also, the scientific consultant had an opinion on Current War versus this movie,
Oh,
which I
really?
thought was
What did they
kind of
say?
interesting, kind of funny because since we were comparing the
Yeah.
way that he was portrayed. He says, on maybe a more pragmatic point of view, the current war is a pretty bad representation of Tesla. In fact, I think it's quite misleading. So I'm glad this film came out so people can get a better view of Tesla's important contributions. The main characters in that movie are more Westinghouse and Edison, while Tesla is portrayed as this sort of weaselly eccentric in the background, which I
Yeah, I
totally
agree.
agreed.
Yeah,
And
so I
and
agree.
it's kind of how we felt after we watched Current War.
Mhm,
We were just like, oh my God, why don't they make a movie about Tesla? Like he's way like, hello, give
mhm.
him credit where credit
Yeah,
is due. And here we
yeah,
are. If
yeah,
you're wondering why we're doing this episode just on Tesla, even though we kind of already talked about him, it's
yeah.
because
Well, yeah, I mean, and I guess it is now that I've watched this one too, and we've kind of done our research, I do realize it is a little bit more difficult to do like a film on him because of the limited information. So I
hmm
kind of like, okay, I get it. So I mean, considering everything that this film had to like go off of, like I think it did okay, but it's like, yeah, it just was just a wee bit short for me. But there were aspects that I was like, ooh, and then I was like, okay, I don't know. I actually did like the narration too. It kind of like brought some like pizzazz to it for me too.
yeah.
Yeah, the narration I think really helped me because I guess there were parts where I was like, wait, who is that again? And then, just help guide what was going on in that time.
Yeah, it kind of like brings your focus back, definitely. And
Hmm.
it's just like, oh, like give me a quick like what's going on here.
Yeah. And I think that's also because like I said, I feel like they were just like boom, 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 boom. Like this is what's going on in his life. And so I feel like that helped it along as well. Final thoughts, guys. I mean, I think we've kind of said it throughout. I feel like I'm sad. Like he was a very genius person, but I feel like towards the end of his life, he seemed like he was kind of just, I mean, I guess throughout his life, he seemed like he was kind of just a little bit misunderstood and underappreciated. And yeah, I just wish there was even more on him that we could go off of. Like I don't know, I wish he like almost like he kept journals or something. Like I'm
I
sure
was
he
gonna
did,
say that.
but maybe they just haven't like been able to get into them or something. I don't know. Because I feel like most people kept journals back in that
Hmm.
time.
I wonder what he would like make during our time, because all of this is like, yeah,
Crazy
they didn't,
stuff.
yeah, like I'm just like his mind was able to just like produce so much. I don't know, like he's such an engineer that he can like put two and two together and try to make something out of it. Whereas like what sometimes I'm always like, what can you even invent now? Like
Yeah, I think that too.
everything has
But
been invented.
I think
So
maybe it's just like bettering things that we currently
mhm.
have, like elevating.
I just think
Yeah.
it's crazy that he died in 1943. It's just like that seems
Yeah,
just like so recent compared to like where he started, where people didn't have electricity in their house. And
that's
every time
true.
I think about that, I'm just like, oh, that was a million years ago that people, were living by candlelight or,
Yeah.
gaslit lamps and stuff like that. And it's just like he died in 1943. Like he lived through a world war. Oh, also, he was friends with Mark Twain.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
saw
saw
that.
that.
Yeah, and like and I had to look up the picture, but they're speaking again on his demonstrations about how he would use the human body to conduct electricity. There's a really cool photo of Mark Twain holding like one of the earliest fluorescent
That's
light
cool.
bulbs with Tesla. Yeah, so I
That's
was like,
cool.
wow, that's such a cool picture.
Yeah. Ooh, I'll have to post that to the Instagram.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Internet Historians. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and give us a rating. And we would also love to connect with you. So make sure you follow us on Instagram and subscribe to us on YouTube. And next week's episode, we will be discussing the women who stood up to Roger Ailes from the movie Bombshell. So don't forget to tune in. Thanks again, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.